Hey, what's going on? Checking in with you. About to make some pancakes, but had a few concepts, or like one main concept that kind of struck me today while I was scrolling through TikTok, and this guy was talking about Rome and how Rome got sacked, and so Rome was sacked, and the senators, the politicians, and stuff, they weren't really doing what they were supposed to be doing. And so, like, the city just went to shit. And the guy was saying, like, the people were just, or the government was just interested in, uh, what is revelry and, like, all kinds of sexual deviance. And, yeah, because a lot of that Roman shit, there's bathhouses where pretty much everyone was, like, fucking each other, you know? And, they don't really talk about it too much, but kind of crazy shit with that. So I was thinking, what about like, so the way it was described and the way I kind of thought about it was like, the city didn't really like implode, right? It was like, because business doesn't stop, if people are selling a service or a product, it doesn't like demand for shit doesn't stop, right? It keeps going. And wherever there are people, there's always going to be business, right? People need to eat, right? All kinds of business. So when you think of decay and corruption of a society, like things are still moving in it. People are still working, mouths are still getting fed. You know what I mean? People are still doing their thing, you know? And that means, so we are still operating within it, right? And and as I was saying, the Romans, they were probably still operating in it. It's like hell, they had to make their wage. They had bills to pay and taxes. Soldiers were still enforcing policies on the people. You know what I mean? Day to day stuff. But the the way I see it now, what's kind of maybe coming in with our society, the way I can bring this in is maybe now the same things happening, or are like, cities are being sacked, and it's by highly organized criminals, right? So the city's still functioning, business is still going on per usual. You still got taxes and bills to pay, just like your neighbors, and just like the criminals. The criminals have to pay taxes and they have to stay fed and stuff. But the deal is that the society is being compromised in a way that's not on the books, right? So going back to Caesar and the Roman Empire, the main job of the Caesar was to conduct taxes, That was the whole job of, like, you could worship any god you wanted to in Rome, but you had to worship the Caesar above all other gods. So what that means, the reason why is because the Caesar controlled the money. He made sure that the currency was flowing, the currency was ebbing and flowing, that the currency also kept value, and inflation was kept. They're very, they're that advanced back in the day. They could do that. They knew what they're doing. And so that's still going on. People are still paying their tax. They still need to pay their taxes. It's this overarching theme. Even though all this decay and civil degradation is happening, somehow the taxes still get paid. you know. And what is that? Is that men with guns that enforce those policies that make it happen? So make that able to happen. It's just, yeah, that's the most fascinating part about it. Like, if my thinking is right, which it might be not, it might not be, you know, but it's still a really fun mental exercise, you know, and kind of change it up a little bit on how we think of things. But the Caesar, so let's get deeper in from let me regurgitate some of the stuff that I've gotten into. So let's further examine the Caesar and the Caesar controlling the money, right? He controls the money, and he makes sure taxes are paid. You know, you owe Caesar your taxes. Pay unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God's what is God's. You know, so that means we're operating in the matrix, you know, and all for our benefit, of course. You know, our forefathers put us in the system for our benefit, and we have benefited. But there are things we give up to live in these societies, in this advanced type of society where we all agree on the overall theme of the taxes and the government, you know, that we're in right now. You know, we abide by, you know, the laws, the state, the city, and we agree that the police can come arrest us and the state can press charges on us, you know, if we violate one of their things. You know, we all agree to that, right? And that's kind of what makes the whole thing work, right? And then you got to work, right, too. You got to earn, you got to create value somehow. That's another thing, too. That's a whole, if we really want to get into it, there's like probably whole classes of blue collar work that can probably get away with crime a lot easier than other, you know, or white collar, you know, white collar criminals. If the person's got enough money, they won't mess with them, you know, and it gets really hard to really press some charges on some people, I guess. But and sometimes, you know, the cops always have discretion. So anyways, let's get further into the Caesar thing. So the boats, they're big importers, and so they had ships coming in, and the ships would have all kinds of goods, imports from guys that ran markets on the ship in Rome. You know, the Mediterranean Sea was very popular for Rome, of course, to conduct commerce on, business, commerce. And the definition of commerce is actually like one of the many definitions of commerce is intercourse and sex. So Jordan Maxwell, I've been listening to a lot of him lately, and he reminds you that, you know, there's an argument in some of the movements years ago, and still to this day, that people are like commodities traded on the stock market, pretty much. Yeah, then we are, you know, as long as we work for these companies that are traded. Pretty much these companies, all the companies are humans, organized humans. So in a way, we are a chattel that's traded on the New York Stock Exchange, and it goes even further than that. Like wraps into our Social Security and stuff. And I was going to do blueberry pancakes, but so ships would be coming in with all kinds of merchants products. So the Mediterranean Sea, a lot of Roman colonies were on northern Africa, and then when the Moors fought off Rome and they took over the whole Mediterranean, and that's what destroyed the Roman Empire too, is their the Mediterranean Sea was taken over by pirates, Moorish pirates. I think it's Moorish pirates, Barbary maybe, and So they took them over, so the pirates took over the Mediterranean, and merchant guys in Rome would be, um, they would be much better off not, it'd be a big risk to be a merchant one day, sailing the Mediterranean, and then be caught by a pirate, and either became headless, murdered, and your ship taken from you by the pirates of the sea, or become like a slave of theirs, right? So that's what helped fall the Roman Empire as well. Uh, so yeah, that could be what could happen potentially in the roads. The highways and byways of the United States could become dangerous territory. If that were ever the case, that would be pretty bad. So we'd have to worry about transporting goods, making sure, like, because that's where the best pirates, that's where pirates could strike, is in the logistics. Um, so yeah, so the Caesar, getting back to this, the Caesar, they would have imports, and the ships would berth product. All right, and so in order for the currency and the stability of prices, the Caesar there would be a bill of lading, just like today. The ship tells you, and that's why we have port authorities now. The ships come in, they provide all these goods and materials to a society that once weren't there, so that the government has to know what's coming in, know what's being sold, know what kind of income people are earning in their society, so that they can price stuff adequately and maintain the currency. Maintain the currency so it doesn't inflate too much or deflate too much. Oh, shoot. We'll just do a big one. Uncle Buck pancake. All right. So that's why ships have bills of lading in them, and so you can keep track of the records of all this stuff. Anyways, so that's the reason why the Caesar would do what the Caesar did. And that's why everyone had to pay their taxes and worship the Caesar above all gods. And that's like our government as well. Like I said, somehow the taxes are always needed. A society could degrade without even people having to go to work. Maybe eventually their jobs would end because the culture becomes so hollowed out. So pretty much what it is there's a rule of law, and then people operating outside of the rule of law. All right. Yeah, that gives you big gains and big returns, but it's just the liability is so great. If our government can get its shit together, and that's what it likes too. That's what the government likes. It likes when there's a lot of chaos and a lot of organized crime that's running rampant. So one day it can just drop down the hammer. And, it's kind of like hogs. That hog catching on video, when you drop you let them all kind of gather up and get together. And once they're all together, once the time's right, you hit the switch. And I'm not saying all the criminal networks are going to get busted immediately, but criminal networks, eventually get busted. But if you can get away with it, you make a bunch of money. So, but if you get away with it, that also contributes to the degradation of the culture. You know what I mean? So people are getting off on, making extra money and stuff, but at what greater price is that, right? And so yeah, it takes a toll. Um, if you're a crime guy and you commit crimes, and other people, other criminals are benefiting off of your crime, and they're also committing crimes as well. It's off the books, you know, and that's the issue. That's what the problem is. The problem is off the books. And so that's pretty much sums it up. Everything has, they want everything legal so it can be on the books. Anything that's off the books is open, fair game for, you know, the system to clamp down. Right? Okay, let's check on this pancake. So that's pretty much all I wanted to really say. Let's see if I can flip this bad boy. If I can flip this, I'll end it on a good note right here. All right. All right. Not too bad. All right. Yeah, I got it. A little messy, but that will be the bottom. All right. Pretty much that's it. Class dismissed. And if you made it this far, I got the blueberry pancake, buttered that baby up, threw some granulated sugar on it, got a coffee. All right. Enjoy.